Alright, we're here for match 1 with some Four Eidolon Boros Burn. Okay, we're up against a companion deck. Well, I guess we'll get to see if Eidolon is Dece or Dece Plus right away. Lead on Basic Mountain and the Goblin Guide here. Attack, trigger, where's this Saga? So I'm guessing Jun Saga would be my guess. There goes Eidolon. Tad bit unfortunate for our opponent. Thoughtseize bug, however, confirmed. I'm gonna fetch this though, so we have everything online. The longer this game goes, the more our opponent's going to be favored with these double Urza Sagas, so we do have to get this game over pretty quickly. Tarmogoyf comes down, would be 4/5. Just going to serve with the Goblin Guide here if they want to block and trade, question mark. So, nope, that wouldn't even be a favorable trade for us, so. Yeah, always be mindful of your Tarmogoyf math. Alright, being on the play certainly helped there. So, having played a good bit of this deck now, they usually have Tarmogoyf, Orcish Bowmasters, Urza Saga tokens, sometimes Fable, and then Ragavans sometimes. I think on the draw we want to take out a couple of our Eidolons, maybe all of our Eidolons. If we did that, what would we want to bring in? Smash is very situational, as is Wear Tear. Not really a direction you want to go. Vortex would be a consideration, but they might be bringing in Shatter or, not Shatter, Disenchant effects for Eidolon anyway. So I think we just do a little bit of minimum sideboarding here. On the play, you might go back to Eidolon being in your, or the other two copies of Eidolon being in the deck. But So what does this hand bring to the party? We like to party. Suspend Riftbolt on one, double. 12 points of burn, one cantrip land. Probably decent enough. Pretty much acknowledging the fact that we have to ignore anything like Ragavan or anything, unfortunately. Which of course they have on one. Good chance this monkey runs away with the game, but there's really... I mean, we could bolt it, but if they want to use a bolt, that's fine. Yep. Now, the fact that they have missed their second land drop, I am going to kill this Ragavan. Which, I will admit, is a little counterintuitive to what I just said, but since they're missing their land drops, I'm just going to go ahead and kill the monkey. And these are exactly the situations why I strongly dislike Eidolon. Especially on the draw. Just, you're getting blanked by a larger creature, a larger battlefield, plus we obnoxiously grow this Goyf. So if we take 5 and then 5, alternatively, I can play this Eidolon, go to 9. If they kill it, they go to 6. Then we're in a much better position to top deck to kill them. So it's certainly risky. Like if they could have Mountain, Bolt, whatever. Ironically, our opponent should have left Eidolon in play. I don't think it matters now. I do think we die because we've taken too much damage from our lands, but opponent's got to have a third removal spell, which is okay. Not guaranteed, but so Tarmogoyf doing Tarmogoyf things. So So we could potentially get into a racing situation with monkeys and such, but Helix does have the possibility of putting us in a bad situation. So on the play, I'm going to board it out. We can't keep the 4-lander against the Thoughtseize Inquisition deck. Well, I guess probably post-board Inquisition deck, but I think the putback here is a land. And I'm going to go with Sacred Foundry rather than the fetch land, because we want to potentially be able to trigger landfall, not necessarily on curve. Okay, do they fetch shock? They do indeed. Mm-hmm. I'm going to attack first, see if they block. They do, which is mildly annoying from a damage perspective, but because we could have easily killed that. Mm-hmm. Haywire Mine, annoying as always. Termaglyph too? They do not. They could have Weather the Storm here. Not super likely, but it is a possibility. Okay, Bowmasters, I guess, made more sense. Okay, they're on the heavy Bowmasters draw. Oh, gotta let Tree resolve first. Definitely should have certain blaze that first monkey. Running ticks, sure. If they're smart, they just might use run here as a ping. Mm-hmm. Presume they're chilling on a fatal push or something. Taking 2, getting pinged for 1. They have Bolt, we're dead next turn, or Timerglyph. Alright, dead to Bolt, dead to 4th Bowmaster, dead to Colgan's Command. I guess we're also technically dead to another Renin 6. Yep, dead to Exaxes. So mistakes were made. If I would have played the Searing Blaze, dealt with the first Ragavan, gotten in 2 more points of damage, that probably would have been the differential here. So, small mistakes can add up, especially when burn is as kind of under the gun as it is in the current meta. All right, back for match number 2. Alright, suspend Earthbolt into Eidolon or Searing Blaze. So at least whatever you want to say, we're giving Eidolon a fair shakedown cruise here. Alright, Scam, yay! Grief.bullsh, go! Presume you gotta take Eidolon here, right? Take Boros Charm. I mean, decent chance they just have a removal spell or something for Eidolon, but alright. Hold the fetch land in case we draw Searing Blaze. Now the question becomes, does our opponent have Bowmaster or Yawgmoth, or is this just hard removal spell for Eidolon? Okay. It's possible I shouldn't be taking this extra damage, that I should just Now there is no guarantee we're free and clear here. If our opponent has Shouldered next turn, things could get very ugly very quickly, aka we lose. Looks like they're going to cash in Fable here. Yeah. Just playing a land down pass. Opponent pitching Mount Doom and Thoughtseize. Okay, so I'm not going to be able to play around Bowmaster here, so... I think we just pass here. How's our opponent chilling on over there? Mm-hmm. Gotta do this before damage, or they could just bolt us in response. Problem is there's no single card that gets us out of this, so... Just an FYI, if I attack there, I was dead on board, so... Not that it matters, because there's no single draw that gets us out of this. Alright, against them, I really don't like Eidolon. Probably 2 Sanctifier, 2 Path. Guess you could conceivably go with a 3rd Path, cutting a Lightning Helix because of Ragavan. But yeah, need to have some outs to shoulder it, so the skull cracks in. Trying to think if there's any way, maybe we're supposed to be more aggressive with attacking with that Swift Spear, but I think they had that terminate anyway, so I'm not sure we were going to squeeze any extra damage out of it. So alright, this hand is theoretically pretty reasonable, as long as we don't get grief scammed. Even if we get grief scammed, we probably get left with a hand that looks like this. So they take 2, 4, 5, 6, in addition to probably fetching at a swamp at best. So it's not like we're in a hopeless situation with a hand like this if the grief scam us, but we would definitely prefer that they don't grief scam us. Never mind, they just have Blacklead Cliffs. Pretty good chance this just dies, but Orcish Bowmasters. We could risk playing the double Swift Spear there, but oh, did they pitch Karoxa? Yeah, I'm really glad we had this Sanctifier down. You gonna play Voidwalker main phase? Nope, Engineered Explode. Chalice on 1. Well, it was a fun game while it lasted. Should have cracked this main phase, by the way. Alright, quick goes to start. Alright, match 3. Yeah, pretty reasonable hand. Riftbolt into Riftbolt Skewer or into Searing Blaze potentially. See if we can make a comeback here. Okay, so Kithian. Did we queue into the O2 humans bracket? Feels like we queued into the O2 humans bracket. We. Oh, this might actually be interesting. This could potentially be actually Boros or Mardu Winoda, the legendary deck. They play like the white tree of something rather, and it pumps all of the legendary creatures. I played it some on one of the channels that I don't currently... Yep, okay. So it is, in fact, the red-white legendary deck. Draw a land, we win. Draw a bolt or lava spike, we win here. Creature also be decent if it's not named Eidolon. So pretty good number of outs here. That qualifies as an out. Yeah, this deck hits like really, really hard because of this. Tajik. I mean, nice way to stay alive, but their deck probably doesn't have too many hasty creatures. They might have like Ragavan, Tajik, and I don't even know. Just play Eidolon here. Like, obviously we could just play Boros Charm and win, but they had double bolt. Excuse me. Okay. Well, that was clearly the wrong play. Is my Eidolon good? Apparently, yes. Alright, so white tree of flowering of the white tree. We definitely want, probably want, well, we might want those. Problem is their deck doesn't have a ton of Boros Legends aggro. Surge of Salvation is certainly a card. It's like Surge is the main card we gotta play around. So we probably want Paths to Exile. Sanctifier doesn't make a ton of sense because they have almost as many white creatures as they do red. Is there any life gain in this pile? Doesn't seem to be. His hand is decent, although Goblin Guide's effectiveness is questionable. Okay, guess we have to fetch shock at some point, so may as well do it now. They have bolt, it's kind of whatever. Mox Amber is a moderately terrifying card, but I think they're going to end up fetching it away, which they do. Opponent may go for a slow play here of playing Flowering of the White Tree and then start playing their creatures possibly. This is problematic for them. Now they could certainly have Sanctifier and Beck, etc. Instead they just play Kari Zev, which I think we're going to go ahead and deal with here. Which unfortunately is going to cost us some damage to do so. So I could just Lightning Helix this. I could play Goblin Guide, skewer it. Either way, we're getting in for 2 points of damage and using a card. I think we'll just get both Goblin Guys in play. Zergo is kind of whatever. Okay, if I were to just strictly burn them out here. We do have 13 points of burn in hand, and it's unlikely that they have a Painless land currently in hand with playing Sunbaked Canyon as their second land. So I think it's actually better to skewer their face, and then we just have enough burn over the next couple of turns to kill them. Yeah, Sanctifier and Beck is... It blunts our creatures, but it's not a good card against burn. It's one thing I don't think people entirely appreciate is that, yes, Sanctifier has protection from red. Congratulations. However, it doesn't gain life, so it's not really good against burn. Especially when you're, taking extra damage in order to play it. Now, against opponents should have attacked with Sanctifier there. Against Rakdos Scam, it does make sense to play these cards. I'm not going to deny that fact. But against burn, yeah, I guess if you have them, bring them in, but they're not the best of cards against burn. Alright. Got the win against a deck that really isn't part of the meta, but... Alright, match number 4 against Lord of the Grave. 4 lands, just not going to cut it. This hand is good. Back Bowl, I guess. Breeding Pool. Okay, we're on a timer. So this is likely 4-color Omnath Pile. Yep, and this will be the only time our Goblin God connects. Opponent will likely play Teferi Hero or Teferi Time Raveler here. Possibly bounce Goblin Guide. Don't know what else they would play here. Yep. Teferi the Time Raveler. So, not going to deal with Teferi quite yet. We know our opponent has Solitude in hand. Going to play this Goblin Guide, attack it at Teferi. I don't truly care if Teferi lives or dies, but it does make a burnout playing a lot easier. The One Ring, huh? Solitude, pitch Solitude. They don't want the One Ring, eh? Since our opponent was nice enough to fetch during our turn, we'll go ahead and cast this Spectacled Skewer of the Critics and Bolt. Alright. Feels like a Wrenn and Tix. Like they're debating casting a Wrenn and Tix, or are they just casting the One Ring? They are just casting Omnath. Okay. So, if you have a Force of Negation, you win. If you don't, or I guess Solitude. Might be why they're pausing here. Yep, Solitude Leyline Binding. Possibly should have held this for Searing Blaze purposes. Okay, delayed halfling. Land. Alright. Got their game one against Omnath Pile. So cards am I interested in? Omnath, Focus of Creation. Halfling, Omnath. Chalice is in the sideboard. Bells of Summer, Endurances, Tishan's Tidebinders. Cheap counter spells. So I'm probably interested at least in these. You could also argue Path to Exile, but I think that's overboarding even against Omnath. The only other card I would consider is Smash to Smithereens. I think Wear Terror is just a little too much. Searing Blaze is not all that good, except against Delighted Halfling. Lightning Helix is probably our worst burn spell. And I think the next cut is one Riftbolt because, well, 3 Fairy is a card. So, those of you who don't understand that, if you suspend a Riftbolt and your opponent has a Teferi hero, or not hero, Dominaria, it's a hero Time Raveler, it gets countered basically because it comes off a suspend and you can never cast it. Looks like they might have the Delighted Halfling on one, or are they just fetching for value's sake here? Fetching for time value, got it. Certainly appreciate someone who fetches for time's sake. Well, I could easily have Leyline Binding here, but I don't think we win the game by playing nothing, so, or they could have Reprieve. Don't think we can really afford to play around it, so. Resolves, okay. Say still could have been Leyline Binding, I suppose. No, actually, Binding would have cost 3 there. So they could just be Teferi bounce, but they do take 2 to do that. Or it could just be grab the other 2 or 3 color Triome, Leyline Binding this. Teferi would cause them to take 2 additional damage. Plus we get to replay it. No, it looks like it's just a Leyline Binding. Question becomes, do you have double Leyline Binding? The world may never know. Certainly have 1. Huh. I wonder if they were thinking about playing Force of Virtue there. Or Force of Vigor, sorry. That would have dealt them 10 damage. I would have been fine with that. Yep. I think this is going to be a hard cast Force of Vigor. Oop. Literally nothing we can do if they boarded in Force of Vigor. Endurance. Sure. Why would you? Okay, wouldn't you want the Bolt to counter the... or to deal with the Eidolon? Is this the, yeah. Yeah. This is the old, I forgot that Vortex has flavor text. Whoops. I was going to say, it feels like a concession lockup. Back for match number 5 on the play. It's theoretically a great hand, but gonna be disciplined and mulligan it. This hand, while it doesn't have the quite the explosiveness of the other hand, still feels like it's a reasonable hand. One of our better starts, Goblin Guide into burn spells. Okay, so it looks like we are up against Rhinos. That is the only deck I know that plays main deck Mystical Dispute. Alright, so that kind of scripts our play here. Go this. If we didn't draw Swift Spear, our best play would actually probably be to upkeep Boros Charm. The reason being this exactly right here. Force of Negation wouldn't be able to be cast during that time frame, so... It goes to 12 here. So they should probably cast their Dead Gone now. No, Lorien Revealed. Okay. So we will definitely be getting Rhinos next turn. Casting my worst spell, that way if they Force of Negation us again... Okay, we were definitely not attacking. Here comes Rhino Claws, here comes Rhino Claws, write down violent bout slain. Don't give up my day job, yes I know that. But here the Rhinos come anyway. Kinda telegraphed when Rhinos does it. Oh, they're such an annoying deck. Double red? Or double blue? Merc Turd Regent. Alright, so we are during their turn, so Force of Negation is not currently on. Blook. Blook. We still could have Dead Gone, but it literally doesn't matter for what we're doing here. Alright, stealing game one, kind of important, especially since we're in, with everybody on the Eidolon of the Great Revel plan, as opposed to Roiling Vortex. Our game one is actually worse against the Cascade decks. Yes, it's 4 versus 5 damage, but Eidolon is also pretty much negated by the Rhinos being on the board, by anything like that. You know, Dead Gone, Fire Ice. Obviously they don't have Fury, but Searing Blaze is pretty bad in this matchup. Could bring in, like, you could conceivably bring in Paths, but I just don't think that's the best choice. I think on the draw, I want to go down 1 Eidolon. Probably only want to see 1. So, the problem with the newer burn configurations is you have less cards you could conceivably play on turn 1 and turn 2 to lock out Rhinos. So on the draw especially, or if they happen to draw, or if they happen to be on the version that plays Gemstone Cavern, you only get 1 opportunity to land one of your 2-mana haymakers to try to okay, so either Goblin Guy's getting Fire Iced or one of our lands are getting Fire Iced. I'm not sure which. Looks like they're going to go after a land. Boop. Opponent gets to put 10 power in play here. Presumably fetching. Okay, that also works. Why would you fetch? Excuse me? Why wouldn't you play Shardless Agent there? That makes no sense. Yeah, you're right. Unless I don't think they fetched it away. Yeah, that made no sense to me whatsoever. You should have just played your... Crashing Footfalls last turn. Can we beat the Force of Negation? I do not know. They would need to Force of Negation this, or they're just dead. Alright, well. Alright, 3-2 finish after an 0-2 start. Alright, gonna wrap a quick bow on this one. It's a list you might see a couple other times because one of our fellow Burn community is playing this list at the RC. Now, a couple things to know about the RC. Number one, it is open deck list, but if I recall correctly, they only list the sideboard cards. They don't list how many. I could be wrong, could be completely open deck list, but I know the main deck is, you know, open deck list, and then the sideboard, obviously, I think is either they show you the entire sideboard or they tell you the cards that are in the sideboard but don't tell you the numbers. So that is relevant for how the sideboard is built a little bit, but the rest of the main deck is pretty much stock. If I were to play the Four Eidolon build, pretty much stock Burn. You've got the 4-4-4 with Eidolon, which a lot of people have been favoring Eidolon. I'm still preferential to my own build, but I'm not the one going to the RC, so I'm going to default to our RC players deck list. The rest of the deck, I mean, the main deck is nothing too fancy. The one thing to note, though, is the split on the fetch lands, which, if you're going to something like an RC, if you have access to all 4 red fetch lands, splitting them up is the best thing to do, because Pithing Needle is a card, and people are going to get every little edge they can. So having 1 Arid Mesa, 2 Bloodstained Mire, 2 Scalding Tarn, 1 Wooded Foothills, all makes sense. 4 Sunbaked Canyon, 1 Fire Islet, pretty standard. The 2 Sacred Foundry, 3 Mountains, once again, nothing too fancy there. The one thing I guess you could potentially try, but probably not for an RC, is maybe cutting one of the basic mountains and going with second Fire Islet, just to get a little bit more out of your mana base. But with Eidolon back in the party, that might be a little bit too much. Sideboard, this is obviously where I think I can say his name, but I'll just leave the name out for now. If he comments on this video later and he wants to talk about his list, that's fine. I just don't want to necessarily give away what he's playing. Although, with, I think, open deck lists at RC in Denver, it's not going to really particularly matter. But 3 Path to Exile, there's a number of things this hits in the format. We saw some of Burn's problems with things like Tarmogoyf, Death Shadows, Murktide Regents. Those are all cards. The Path to Exile is a perfectly reasonable card to play against. It's not as high variance as a card like Ensnaring Bridge. It deals with one of your opponent's creatures as opposed to all of them, unlike Ensnaring Bridge. But Ensnaring Bridge is vulnerable to things like, Shatter Effects, Kulagon's Commands, not that people really play it, but a Braid, Force of Vigor, things that they're already going to be bringing in for your Eidolons and potentially rolling Vortexes. So, once again, nothing too fancy there. 3 Rolling Vortex, perfectly fine to supplement your Eidolons against the Cascade decks. Perfectly reasonable against the Omnath Solitude decks. So can't really argue with that. I've almost always liked a split on 2 Smash, 2 Wear Tear. That's been kind of my default anti-artifact package, against the Urza Sagas and everything else. So I can't really argue with that. The one card that I don't disagree with, especially if you expect an RC that Yawgmoth's going to be one of the more played decks, Cursed Totem makes a lot of sense. So giving the Yawgmoth players a little bit of pause. 2 Exquisite Firecraft, once again, perfectly fine. You need something to cross the finish line against Murktide, Rhinos, Blue-White Control, Omnath. You know, we saw a good, decent amount of Blue-White or Blue-X decks in this particular league, so can't really argue that. The one bone of contention I would have with this list kind of lies with the number of Sanctifier Invex. Now, maybe with the configuration they're comfortable with their Rakdos Scam matchup. I pretty much always prefer when Scam is a part of the meta to have 4 Sanctifier Invec, so personal differences there. How much it would have made a difference in the games that we lost against Scam, I'm not sure. But Scam's a matchup that's Burn is probably slightly a dog to, even with the current configuration, shoulder the cards, so you see wanting the pass and Sanctifiers. You know, I'm not sure the right configuration on cutting Eidolons for that matchup. So that'd be the one card I would be kind of like, I wish I had more of these in my sideboard. The way I would personally accomplish that, not that I would play it in RC, so take this with a grain of salt, is I would probably cut 2 of the Eidolons in the main, move 2 of the Roiling Vortexes to the main deck, have a 2-2 split on that, and then play an additional 2 Sanctifiers, especially if you want to keep that Cursed Totem in the loop. But this configuration makes sense if you're comfortable with your Scam matchup. If you're not, I like a little bit of sideboard help against that matchup personally. But it's kind of where I'm at on this list so far. Obviously, 1-3-2 league. We'll definitely be playing this list again. It fulfills a couple of things. Number one, it's one of our channel bigger supporters. He's contributed quite a bit on the mother channel during some of the live streams. MTG Nexus, the main channel. And then, obviously, they are playing at the RC, so they probably want to see some different scenarios and different games with this deck. So you'll definitely be seeing it. Plus the fact that this is our Eidolon testing kind of gives me a good idea of whether Eidolon should be played in these lists or not. Once again, I'm not a huge fan of Eidolon, but then again, I'm a little bit slower to adapt. The in-tech for the burn community, I was slower to adapt the inspiring or the Roiling Vortexes while people were cutting Eidolons, and then I've been kind of slower to move away from the Roiling Vortexes while everybody's like Eidolon, Eidolon, Eidolon. So take it with a grain of salt. But if you like burn content, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Hope to see you for our next video.